I was so focused on getting, especially after having our first miscarriage, I was like, well, I'm going to get the rainbow baby. That's going to be that miracle story. And that's the like success infertility story that I would see a lot. And years and years went by and I was like, oh, what if I don't get that in the way that I wanted? And then I thought, I'm still a success story though, because my life is wonderful. And if the miracle isn't the baby, what is the miracle? And then it was like, I think it can be me. And I put it back to myself and like, what can I do that feels miraculous? And even if it's just sitting and having my coffee in the morning, that can be enough.
I'm Keltie McGuire, and you're listening to the Kids or Childfree podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Kids or Childfree podcast. Today, I am bringing you a super beautiful and heartfelt conversation with none other than Carrie Hauskens. Now, you may know Carrie from her Instagram account, which is called Blooming with Care. And I have to say that every time Carrie comes across my feed, I am in equal turns amazed by the resilience that she showcases, her vulnerability, and the joy that she just sort of emanates. Carrie is a creative. She's a freelance writer who is based in Northern California, and her story is one that can offer us some solace and encouragement and hope, no matter where we are in our own journey, because she is a reminder that no matter what sort of loss we may experience or the plans that we may have and how they might change, that there's still a possibility for beauty and joy in our lives. You'll hear, of course, about Carrie's story in much more detail today, but to share a little bit, she spent 8 years trying to conceive. She experienced multiple miscarriages. Carrie has worked with surrogates, and she delivered her stillborn daughter, Clementine, who you'll hear a little bit about today. And so it's really just an honor to have Carrie with us, sharing her story of how she has come to claim the child-free after infertility identity and all of the learning and growing she has done, which has really required her to get up close and personal with this deep loss and grief that she's experienced. There's a lot of vulnerability in that, and through it, how she's been able to build this incredible and beautiful life. All right. Okay. Well, Carrie, I am so glad that we are finally having this conversation. I think I have possibly invited you onto the podcast about 6 times. I'm like, the invite is coming. We're going to do this. And recently you were featured on the Today Show with Jenna and Friends in the US, which is very cool. And I just, again and again, I'm sharing your content with my clients, with my audience. And so it's high time we be having this conversation. So thank you for being here. I would love just for you to share a little bit about yourself, whatever you want to tell about yourself and your story before we get into things.
Sure. And thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I love your work. So I'm Carrie Hauskens. My social media is Blooming with Care. And I tried for 8 years to become a parent, and I really wanted it. I was like, I'm going to be a parent. On my husband and our first date, I was like, do you want kids? Because if you don't, I'm not interested in dating. And he was like, sure. Yeah. So it was like,
this lady means business.
Yes. I was in my 30s. I was like, I'm tired of doing this. I just want to start my life, because what was I doing in the meantime? I didn't think it was living. That was for sure. And, we tried naturally for 5 years, and it wasn't really working out. I was like, I just kept living in that cycle of like, it's going to happen, which was a very unhealthy cycle. But I absolutely refused that there was even an issue, because everybody around me was getting pregnant. So I was like, why can't I just do it as well?
Yeah.
And then we finally got brave enough to admit there was a problem, and we became great candidates for IVF. In the beginning, it was just my husband's, a male factor fertility. And in the end, it was both of us, but we didn't know that at the time. And we started IVF. I got pregnant on the first round, and then I had a miscarriage at 8 weeks. And without really dealing with any of it, I just went right back into the next transfer the next month. And I carried my daughter for 8 months, but I developed a rare liver disease called cholestasis of pregnancy, ICP. The main symptom is itching, like crazy itching. And most people that have this really have normal, well, I don't want to say normal pregnancies, but it wasn't as severe as mine, and it ended up taking her life. And I delivered my daughter Clementine stillborn in May of 2019. And when that happened, literally everything changed for me. And I became like, the grief got me very clear. Like, I realized things that I didn't want to do and wanted to do. I still wanted to be a mother at that point. I was advised never to be pregnant because that liver disease comes back. And we worked with a wonderful surrogate. And throughout this whole time, we had started the adoption process just as like a backup plan, even though I don't like saying it like that anymore, but that's how I was looking at it at the time. I got to hold our surrogate's hand as she had 2 miscarriages. And when we kind of dove a little more into the adoption process and meeting with the agencies, I realized it wasn't for me. It just didn't feel right for me. And so 5 years ago, we decided to stop trying completely. And now we embrace the child-free after infertility life.
Wow.
That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Like a really small nutshell relative to the size of the nut, can we say?
Oh, I love that. I love the way you said that.
I just came up with that. I'm brilliant. Yeah. I mean, I just want to say in general, like, I know it's not just me and the listeners, but your entire audience, anyone who comes across you and the work you're doing, are so grateful for you sharing this so vulnerably. And I'm sure a lot of it is on account of having done a ton of work to be able to like process and sit with the
therapy throughout all of it.
Yeah. I in said today interview, I was like, there was definitely a lot of shout outs for therapy, and I'm on that train as well, you know?
Yeah. We're not supposed to do this alone. There's a lot happening in the brain. And, you know, especially when that like grief hit, I was like, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah. And I mean, I certainly do not want to pour pity upon you by any means, but I also want to acknowledge like the fact that you are not only still standing, but from what I see and what I hear, you seem to be someone who has a great deal of peace and joy and contentment. And you radiate like just this beautiful sort of warmth that I would venture to guess that a lot of people who've been through a situation similar to yours, like, may not come out the other side and
I
any
acknowledge
semblance
that.
of whole.
I definitely acknowledge that. And I remember thinking like when I delivered her, I called it like my capital G grief, because I'd never experienced something like that heavy before. And I just remember thinking I kind of refused to be sad. And I didn't know what that looked like yet. And of course I cry almost every day still. Like there are still like sad parts, but almost like the grief made me want to live. And it was like my reaction to it was very like, well, this means I have to really put intention into my life. And that's exactly what I did. And it was messy. It still is. But those first few years were like, oof, they were not chill. And like, you know, I didn't leave the house for a while, and I had to go to a therapist to like help me remember how to leave the house, because I didn't know how to be a human. And so like and that sometimes still comes up, but I feel so honored to be able to have this life. And I didn't think that I was going to look at it like that. But once I started to really love my grief, it was like almost a way for me to love myself in a whole new way.
Wow. Okay. We're going to delve into grief, because although I certainly think there probably are people who are listening, and I know I've worked with clients who have part of the decision around kids or child free is, do we keep trying, and to what extent, and do I still want this? Because I think it's not everyone's story, but sometimes we just dive into things without really thinking like, is this the right path for me? And
absolutely.
Then infertility and any kind of loss like that, it requires us to decide again and again and again, right? There's this continual opting in. And I think there can be a positive to that, but I'm guessing it must be exhausting.
Yes.
And yet it sounds like for you, it was like there was no continual opting in. It was like, yeah, I'm still doing this. Yes, I'm still doing this, until you didn't. Would you describe it that way? Or was there ever a pause where you were like, oh, do I want to keep going?
There wasn't really a pause. I never really, I guess I think about it sometimes, because when people are like, oh, I encourage people to take breaks if that's what they feel like. But I was not on I'm going to take a break mode. Every single month it's going to happen every single month. And that was, my husband likes to call it hope fatigue, because it was so exhausting. Like I felt broken, and I kept buying into this new, like every month, like every time like my period was over, I was like, well, now we're going to get it this time.
Yeah.
And I I mean, I became clinically depressed and diagnosed with anxiety. And I just didn't know anybody who had done it before me, like in my real life. Well, I had, they just weren't really talking about it. So I felt very isolated, and I didn't want to talk about it because, I mean, there were moments where I had previous friends, they're no longer my friends, be like, you're kind of bumming me out talking about this. And I was like, oh, I don't think we're friends. Like, because this is like me. And especially when like other friends were getting pregnant, and it was like, I can't really have that energy. And I was like, cool. So I can't even show up as myself. And a whole part of this process was learning to show up as myself. And with that came my people that were like, I love you for however you're showing up. But that grief got really heavy. And I remember the day that the surrogate we worked with had her last miscarriage, I just knew it in my bones that I was done. Like, I was so tired of being so sad. And the concept of control had just like completely gone out the window, especially working with the surrogate. It wasn't even my body anymore. And I wanted some sort of control back. And so I thought, well, one of the biggest things I can do is stop trying.
Yeah.
And I remember my husband wasn't at the appointment because it was during COVID times. And I met him later and I told him, I think I'm done. And he was like, whoa, like it kind of came out of left field because we hadn't really talked about it. And he was like, we've come up to these like boundaries before. Like, we didn't think we were going to do IVF. We swore we'd never work with a surrogate. Like, he's like, and we've continually like pushed through. So like, let's give it a few days. And a few days later, I was like, I still feel done. How do you feel? And he was like, he's always been like, I think I could be happy just the two of us. And for most of those 8 years, I was like, there's no way I could be happy just the two of us. And I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much you've shared that we're going to return to. And I'm sure you've shared it a few times before, but you do a really good job of just like setting up this whole kind of story. Cause again, there's a lot of nut there. Let's hope that people got the part I said before. Otherwise they're going to be like, if you weren't paying attention, you got to rewind a couple minutes. So rewind. God, I sound ancient. You said something a few minutes ago, and that was, I had this idea that like, I wanted to start living. I wanted my life to start. And that's what you connected motherhood with.
Yes.
And I think this is something that is reinforced by a lot of people in general, and certainly parents, that like, I wasn't really living until I had kids. I didn't really have love until I had kids. I didn't really have meaning. And it's offensive to people who can't or who have decided not to. But for people who are listening who are on the fence, that seems really daunting because they're like, okay, what am I doing here? What's this life about? And as much as I think that idea doesn't land, it also scares a lot of people. And I'm curious, like, where do you think that idea came from and how do you view it now? Was that true that like you hadn't been living and then now you are because something had changed, or was actually what you were doing before living? And
looking back, I was absolutely living. Like, I was showing up every day for my life. I just was really sad. And I think, like, thinking about it now, it's like, I didn't want that to be my life. I thought not having a child would be a nightmare. Like, literally, that's the vision that I saw. And
how come?
I think mainly like society, because my parents didn't really shove it at me. Like, they were like, whatever, you do you. But I also know that like my mother is a great mom. And I was like, well, I want to be like her. And I was very like, I'm going to follow in some of her footsteps. And since she was like, I always felt safe, loved, and seen with her, that I wanted to do that for somebody else. Like, I wanted to give that. And I didn't know how to do that outside of motherhood. Even though my mom like was very successful in her career and had many other things, I don't know. It just like, it was the picture. And I think a big part of it was most of my friends were doing it. So I was like, well, I can't be the only one who does it. Like, I literally felt like I would be like cast out of society and like pushed to live into the woods by myself. Like, I would have reoccurring dreams about that. And that narrative that I would continually tell myself was drowning me. And I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know many other people I didn't have any other like representation outside of that in my life. I did, but they were like angry women. And and as a kid, I'm like, well, it's probably because you don't have kids. You don't know how to have fun in your life. And as an adult, I'm like, oh, it's about other things. But I didn't know that. So it was just this like narrative that like, I don't think my parents like drilled it in me, but it was a very like, oh, when you have kids or when I read books and stories and movies, it was very much like the stories I was picking to see.
Yeah. Well, and that's so prevalent that runs throughout culture, and it's similar with the big white wedding and this idea of being chosen, and like that we're only valid as women when someone picks us and when we give birth. Like it's always connected with someone else, right? It's never standing within ourselves. It's always about like in our relationship with someone else. Okay. You also shared, and you started to touch on this. I think it was, you said after you gave birth to Clementine that things became really clear for you. I think you said it had a lot of clarity. Was that the juncture there?
Yes.
And okay, so what was the clarity that you received then?
I knew we were going to be okay. Like in the hospital bed, I was just talking about this with my husband before I'd even delivered her, but I knew that she had died and I was induced and I was in labor for like 3 days.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, we're going to be okay. Oh, I'm going to cry. I was like, we're going to be okay. And my husband was like, I don't want to think about that right now. And I was like, okay, I know it though. And he was like, I don't. And I had this just like, we're going to make it through this. Somehow this is going to be beautiful. And he kind of got upset with me of like, I don't want to think about that right now. And I was like, okay, I hear you. And we were talking about how he was like, I don't know how you saw that. And I don't really know how I did either, but I just had this like feeling of this is going to suck for a while, but it's going to be okay. And I knew I didn't want to be a teacher anymore. So I quit my job. I always wanted to be a writer. So I started writing my memoir and I became a freelance writer. And like, I was like, if this thing is going to happen to me, which I desperately did not want, I was going to do other things that I did want that I didn't think were going to be able or as easy as a mother, traveling, building a backyard bathtub. Not that you can't do that with a kid, but it was like, I'm going to push these boundaries of who I could be that I didn't really allow myself to dream of. And I did this with the guidance of a therapist because I'm a very goal-oriented person and I kind of forgot what it like. I feel like with a goal, like you start on it, you work, and then you finish it. And I had been starting and working on becoming a parent for a very long time. And so my therapist kind of helped me like, let's get you to that finished part with something. And I just started exploring that. And when I got really curious about my grief, it didn't feel so heavy. And I got excited about like, well, what's going to make me feel good? And I started leaning into this life of joy and what I call like finding the sparkly moments, because I wanted to just follow the path that felt good. Obviously, there are like still things I have to do. I just went to the dentist. I hate the dentist. Like I'm still doing the things, but if I can survive what I went through, it's almost like in honor of Clementine, I'm going to live a really lovely life. And it just like, once I was open to that, like so many doors and opportunities were opening to where I was like, oh, okay. Like once I'm putting that intention out, it started to happen.
Yeah. I like what you share for a whole bunch of different reasons. First of all, I know in my bones, I know it is fact. I hear from a lot of the women that I coach and in my audience that when they consider not having kids and they think about what a purposeful or meaningful or joyful life looks like, they say to me things like, I feel like it's going to have to be grandiose. Or, Keltie, you have these incredible women on there and they're New York Times bestselling authors. Or they've like traveled the whole world, or they've started a not-for-profit or whatever it may be. And like, what if my life is more simple than that? And I know for me, and interesting, you could say certain aspects of my life might seem over the top as far as, okay, I'm living in a foreign country and we do travel quite a bit, but actually the most beautiful moments are the ones that are actually, I would say, quite accessible as far as being in nature, cuddling with my dog and husband on the couch, watching the way the sunlight goes through the trees, like these little moments. And so this is one thing I really appreciate about your story and the life that you showcase is it does seem exquisitely beautiful. And it also, I understand both of us have certain privileges, but I don't think it's also entirely out of reach for people. And so I'd love for you to speak a little bit more to like, what are those joys? What are those sparkles? And maybe how people can think about accessing some of those things, no matter what they decide, because that's another thing that I hear is that for people who are thinking about having kids or being child-free, the kids path is like, there's a lot of unknowns, but it's clear in the sense of like, I get what's going to happen next. I kind of understand how my life's going to look.
The milestones.
Totally. Mm-hmm. But if I don't have kids, then what? And interestingly, there's, I'm not sure what her name is, but there was a fantastic video I saw yesterday on Instagram from, I think she's an interior designer, talking about her and her husband having kids a little bit later in life. And they said, part of this sort of impetus for having kids is we felt like we were living Groundhog Day. Every day felt the same. Mm-hmm. And I comment on that, not to judge her reason or that being one of the reasons or curiosities around having kids. But I loved what someone said in the comments, which was, if you feel like you're living Groundhog Day, you can also do other things besides having kids to, change it up and to add something new to your life. And I think that connects with this idea of having kids. It's like, it's constantly changing and evolving. Your kids obviously grow, your relationship with them grows. I hear this fear from a lot of people of life today is fine, but if I'm just doing the same thing over and over and over again, like, where does that leave me? And will I really have the kind of fulfillment that I want? So I know I sort of set up a few different approaches to this question, but I'm curious if you can speak to that and some of these simple pleasures.
So when I was working with my therapist about like creating new goals, I got a little obsessive about it, particularly like around food for me, because I had a liver issue and I was like, oh, I'm going to heal it with food, which it took medication to heal, but I refused again for a while. And, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to learn how to cook really healthy. And this was like my new joy and purpose. But then I became really fixated on it. And my therapist was like, hey, so you're like just filling the hole with something else. Like, it's not like you're not really present. You're still like waiting for something. And I, thank goodness for the therapist, didn't really see that. Like, I was like, well, it's not like a bad thing. I'm eating well. And she was like, but you're not like, it's still not accessible to you. You're still not feeling the purpose every day. And so I had to kind of like literally go back to the basics of like, what are my favorite parts of the day? And I love sitting on the patio with coffee. So she was like, next time I want you to sit on the patio and just start like a gratitude. Don't you have to like do a gratitude journal, but just start being grateful for those moments. Like, say it out loud, point it out to the dog or something, like, and with that, practicing like that kind of muscle, I started to see how I already was living this great life and I didn't have to like fill it with other things, because we did travel and we did do those things, but I still like would come home and be like, oh, like, so this is the life, right? Like I'm not coming home to a nursery or something. And so kind of like reframing my everyday gave me a purpose to be happy every day. And starting really small was like, and yes, I'm still like feeding that what life could be without children, but it's also like, this is my life. And so I do want to live it in a way that feels good. And also, like, especially when I quit teaching to become a writer, I did have a decent amount of money and then I didn't. So I had to be like, oh, okay, we got to like take it down a notch. Like, we can't spend Christmas in Paris every year. That's not like a reality. And what can we do? So like every year we love Bon Maman Jam Advent calendar. And it's like a huge tradition for us now. And I
saw that. I love it. Bon Maman Jam's the best.
Yes, they are the best. And like it made it more accessible to myself. And then with that, a lot of other people were like, oh, I've never really thought about it like that. And it was like, oh my gosh. And then like, that's one of my favorite things is seeing what other traditions people have that we can try on, because not meeting those milestones. Like I remember sharing online talking about like stopping fertility treatments. Like nobody really celebrated that for me. And somebody was like, do you think that mothers are celebrated? And I was like, well, pregnant people, but also mothers get to celebrate their children's milestones. And there's like this celebration happening. As someone without children, I'm not having the same milestones. And I want to start celebrating other things that are outside of the traditional milestone.
Yeah. I'm really glad you spoke to that, and thinking about traditions and ritual. Like, I think these are things that all people like to have in their lives.
Yes.
And again, I often hear people and women I work with who have chosen to be child free, and they're like, oh, I'm sad I'm going to miss out on even these things I've kept that I thought I would give to my child one day. And I've encouraged them to think about, like, are there other kids in your life that you might like to either gift them with these things, or like when they come to your house, you have this trunk of these like special items. And maybe the rituals, I know for my husband and I, like, we've since moving to Germany had quiet Christmases on our own for the most part. And like, I love us like dressing up for each other and like taking our photo in front of the tree with a dog and, having a glass of wine or a cocktail on the couch and making a really good like vegan, non-traditional Christmas dinner. And like, I think we need to reimagine things. And even, one more example, but I was reflecting that we do this multi-day hike every year with friends, and we were just on it last week. And I thought, one of the guys that comes with us does have 2 children now, but I thought this is my sort of child-free ritual or tradition. Like, I love being out in nature. I love being in the mountains. And I joke with my friends, like, this is my Christmas. I keep saying I'm going to like rewrite the words to it's the most magical time of the year. Because like for me, it really is. But it's about like me coming together with these people, having this experience that I really enjoy, something that feels really connected and fulfilling to me. Again, we have to push ourselves further, because it's not just placed there in front of you like, oh, your kids are going to like open their stockings. But I think as adults, we can embrace some of the things we loved as children, and B, we can create new traditions and rituals. And
it's scary. Like, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have to like work harder to find something to celebrate. But once I started doing it, it didn't become as difficult. And like, we always have a bottle of champagne in the fridge because we don't know when we're going to need to celebrate it. And it's like, it's just like, you never know. I remember when the Today Show segment I was on was airing, I was going to be by myself. My friends wanted to have like a watch party, but then 2 of them had to work. And I was like, you know what? It's fine. I'm actually really nervous about it anyway. So like, I think I'd like to sit by myself and watch it. And my husband had to go to work because we were in New York for a week. And he surprised me, came home, had bought a fancy bottle of champagne. We had a glass each, and then he went back to work. And it was like, obviously being on the Today Show isn't small, but like the way we approach these new life milestones is a different attitude, and it can take more work, but also like being a parent is a lot of work. So we're just being able to kind of take care of ourselves. And I love how you said like doing the things we loved as kids, because as somebody who was born in the 80s and like the 90s are being cool again, me being able to like relive these like Doc Martens, and even with like the Y2K stuff coming back in it, I'm like, oh my gosh, as an adult, it feels so good. And I get to like feed my inner child in a way that I'm sure I would be doing as a parent, just in different ways, but I get to do it for myself. And that's not a bad thing, because I often will get people, not to my face, mainly on the internet, where people feel like they have free range of like, well, you're very selfish. And it's like, I feel like that's more about you than it is about me, because I'm taking care of myself. I'm part of a community. And I think that when I get to do that for myself, I get to show up for other people in a really healthy way. Like, most of my closest friends are parents. And I didn't know if I was going to be okay with that, but I didn't meet them through their children. They're all artists, and we met through like an art community. And so our main connection is art. Being able to connect with these women outside of even their motherhood. And they even say that they love being not just a mother, because that's not the only thing that they are. That has been also eye-opening in a beautiful way. Because I was like, I have a hard time, like, when it's like, well, like attacking mothers, because I love mine. Most of my friends are. I don't feel like it's a us versus them.
No, absolutely not.
We're women trying to get through this world. And I'm very thankful for the supportive community that I have. And like I mentioned in the beginning, I didn't always have that. And so when I was able to like find it and be like, oh, this is what it feels like to have a meaningful, growing, authentic relationship, I held on to it.
Yeah. I'm curious how you were able to seek out those connections and develop them, because I know that's something that, again, especially at this crossroads of the decision, if you no longer maybe identify with where people are at. And I appreciate your point. I'm similar. I have many mom friends, but I don't want to say certain types of moms, but like for the most part, they are women who are invested in other areas of their lives.
Yes.
And there's certainly have been seasons where they've understandably had to be like almost entirely focused on their children. Mm-hmm. But I would say I see for some people who've chosen this child-free path or through circumstance have ended up there, that maybe not all parent friends are going to be a fit, at least maybe not for where they're at right now. So, I mean, was there a time where you were like, I can't even be friends with parents or moms? Okay. Yes. And then did you consciously seek out people without kids? And how did you do that? And what did that look like?
Like right after Clementine died, I was like, I can't be around babies. That was really hard for me. And then like probably a couple years in, I was like, okay, I can kind of do this. I can be a little more comfortable. And I did look for people I did search out child-free people. Mm-hmm. And even with that, it was like, oh, but that's not like necessarily the reason that someone connects, is just because we don't have children.
Totally. Agreed.
And I pushed it a little far, and it was like, oh, I mean, I still have some that I'm very close with, but I was like forcing it because I was like, well, if I can't have this life, I'm going to have this life. Yeah. And then, probably about 3 years ago, I was like, I don't really have the group of friends that I'm looking for. And so I thought, well, what is something that I love? And there is a storytelling show that happens in our town once a month. And I just started going to that. I love hearing stories. I love writing stories. I just started going to that. I went every month for a year. It took about a year, and I was able to meet people that like, oh, I saw them over and over. The lady who runs the show, she's now one of my best friends, because I was like, can I volunteer and like set up chairs, because I love it so much. And so because making friends as an adult is weird. Like I don't have a ton of time anymore. And also like, I don't want to hang around with people that I don't vibe with like that. I don't want to do that with my life. And so I just started like going to places that I really like over and over and over, and seeing if there was like a feeling that I could click with. And at this storytelling place, it happened. And now I have this whole group of women that I met through there, and it's wildly supportive and communal. Mm-hmm. And they all have children. Which I will say all their kids are a little older, because, we're in our 40s. And so like, the kids can kind of go do their own thing. So they are at a different stage of motherhood. And we're able to not always be focused on the kids, but the kids show up and they're cool.
All right. If you have reached a point on your kids or child-free journey where you are now pretty sure that child-free is a path for you, you feel like you've either made or about to make that decision, and yet you have these niggling doubts that keep coming in your way. You think, what if I regret it? Am I making a terrible mistake? When people ask you, are you planning to have kids? You still answer like, I'm not really sure. I don't know. I know what it's like to be doubtful about claiming this child-free path. And so if you want to go from feeling shaky to feeling rock solid in your child-free decision, you're going to want to check out the fall edition of my Confidently Child-Free Coaching Intensive that starts on October 13th. This will find you in a group of like-minded women who get what it's like to be pretty sure that child-free is a path for you, but not as confident as all those child-free content creators you see on your Instagram feed. If you want to work through those residual doubts that you have about your decision and start to fully claim and plan for a joyful child-free life, this is the program for you. I'm going to show you how to get confident in your decision, because I have been in the same shoes as you. I know what it's like to be pretty sure, but not totally sure that this is that right choice for you. And we're going to help you take things further so you can fully embody this child-free decision, if that applies to you. Of course, if you're on the fence, we've got lots of other coaching offerings. This is just for those of you who are pretty sure that that's the way you're leaning. All right, I will share the details in the show notes of today's episode. You can also find info at kidsorchildfree.com under the Work With Me tab. And if you have any questions, of course, drop me a DM, but otherwise you should find all of the info there for the upcoming cohort of my Confidently Child-Free Coaching Intensive. One thing I appreciate is that this has all happened pretty recently, right? And I think it's so easy for us to feel like if we're at this stage of life where we're 35, 40, 45, and we don't have those kinds of connections, that they're just never going to happen. And I often share a quote that I've heard with my clients, which is, isn't it beautiful to know there are people in your life you will love who you haven't even met yet?
I think about that all the time.
Yeah, do you know who I can attribute that to, by the way?
I don't. I have
me neither.
no idea.
Maybe it's just something a few people have said. I probably could Google that pretty quickly. But I mean, we anticipate no matter what we're going through, whether somebody is going through a loss or deciding to stop pursuing, children, or if they're on the fence and maybe they're choosing that child-free path, or vice versa, they are planning to have kids and they don't feel like they have that support network, is that you have no idea the people who are going to come into your life who will be supporters, who you will support, who you will be in connection with, found family, like all those things. And I remind myself, and I'd encourage people who are listening, and I realize this may not be everyone's reality, especially depending like where you live and what kind of circles you run in, if you will. But like talking about the recent multi-day hike, we had 2 friends come who we've known for probably 18 months, and we see them almost every week. Like they feel like such a soul connection. And will they be in my life a decade from now? I don't know. But right now we support each other. We take care of each other's dogs. It's just good vibes and good times. And like, you couldn't have told me those people even existed 2 years ago. Well, you could have, but like, I didn't know them.
And I think that also accepting and knowing that like not every friend is going to stay in your life forever. Yeah. I was just writing a chapter about friendship and how during my infertility, I broke up with one of my best friends, and it was the worst breakup of my life. Yeah. And I was never really taught or shown how to break up with a friend. I was taught and shown how to break up with a boyfriend, but a girlfriend was a whole different story. And I didn't know how to navigate that. And people to this day will still be like, you need to fix that with that friend. And I'm like, I don't have the need to. Maybe I will later, but at this moment, I feel very good where I'm at. Yeah. And I don't need to force anything. And I think knowing that like people come in and out of our lives at all times for different reason. What is that? A reason, a season, or a lesson?
Or a lifetime, I think, or a lesson.
It's,
one of those.
Yeah, one of those things. And like, it's
a lesson, a reason, a season, a cocktail. so many ways they can show up.
It doesn't have to be this really terrible experience, because like, you're right. Like, there are so many people we haven't even met yet that we're going to love. That's so exciting.
Absolutely. On the topic of relationships, I want to talk a little bit more about the relationship with you and your husband and how it relates to this decision, the infertility journey, the stopping. Your husband sounds a little bit like mine in the sense of like, I can be really happy either way. And you're like, that's not helpful at all. Like, give me some sign or guidance. But I'm curious, did the two of you ever have disagreements about when and how to proceed or not? And what's changed in your relationship over these last several years since deciding to stop having children?
We've been watching couples therapy on.
I've seen you talking about it.
I
don't know if I can get it here. I follow her now because I had clients of mine, actually a couple who I've been coaching, who are like, you have to check her out. She's awesome.
She's great. And it's been bringing up some like really fun conversations with my husband of how like sometimes when there's traumatic things, people don't know how to deal with that together.
Yeah.
And I feel like the second we found out Clementine died, my husband and I fell somehow more in love with each other. We're very honest and open. I mean, I'm a yapper. He's not as much, but he will engage if I ask. And I remember saying like, I don't...
He's laughing at you saying you're a yapper. I'm like, I'm a yapper too. And my husband's a yapper and is like, good Lord.
I know. My husband's like, all right. Okay, Carrie. When... there was like, because we disagree on things all of the time. When it came to our like having children, I was much more set on it, as I said. And he was like, I'm a little more, I don't necessarily need that, but I would love to raise a child with you if that's our path. But of course, he was still like upset when we had a miscarriage, and he was sad when we stopped trying. Mm-hmm. But I recently said like, I don't feel like we're on the same page. And my husband was like, I don't even think we're in the same book. And I was like, oh no. And he was like, that's not a bad thing. Like, we're two different humans experiencing the world through our own perspectives. That doesn't have to be a bad thing as long as we're like open and honest with each other. And
on the same shelf being read by the same reader. I don't know.
But
one's the prequel, one's the sequel. Hey, I'll stop.
It's real though, because I was like, I assumed like when Clementine died, we grieved in such different ways. And I was like, you're doing it wrong. And he was like, is there a way to do this? And I was like, yes, it's how I'm doing it. And he was like, I don't know if you're the only way to do this. And he's like, I'm not sad, or I'm not upset that like we're not doing it the same way, even though I clearly was. And even now in our grief, like I'm not as triggered by things as he is, but he wasn't as triggered years ago. And so it's interesting how like the other day we were at the store and we happened to be in a baby aisle and he was like, why are we here? And I was like, we're just like walking through to, get over here. And he was like, I don't want to be in this aisle. And I was like, oh, I didn't even notice we were in the aisle. Yeah. But I know exactly what you're feeling because I have felt that exact same thing. So let's get out of here. And it's been a nice way to know that like I've felt some grief things and he's also felt some grief things that I haven't, and being able to kind of like mesh those together. We talk a lot about our relationship and things that we could bring to the table. And we're very, very grateful for each other, even if it's like somebody brings like the joke of the night is like, who's going to get our mouth guards to bring to the bed? And so it's like, whoever does it, we're always like, thank you, thank you, thank you, because the other one didn't want to get out of bed. And it's so silly and simple, but it's so meaningful.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Chris and I have this little back and forth about the toothpaste to see who's going to be the last one to finish it. Like, so we always are trying to squeeze more out. It's not as romantic as the mouth guard thing, but it's just a funny thing we do where it's like, if I manage to get it out when it's almost empty, I'm like, yes, I win. Because I know the next time he's probably not going to be able to get it out. And it's like, whoever loses, like, is the one who can't get the toothpaste
out. I love
out.
it though. I love it. It's like how we function in a small space together.
Totally. Absolutely. It sounds like the two of you, I mean, obviously the internet can't tell the full story, but it seems like the two of you have a really beautiful relationship. And I would say, especially concerning something like grief, it's probably good you weren't or aren't on the same page at the same time.
Agreed.
Because I'm going to guess like the whole house would have burned down if that was the case. Like,
we just brought up the other day, we were watching couples therapy, and one of the couples said, I wish you would cry as much as I did. And I looked at Brad and said, no. You can't cry as much as I do, because I cry every day, multiple times a day, mostly for happy reasons, but you never know. I was like, if you cried as much as I did, this would be chaos.
Yeah.
Like,
fair.
I don't know
you guys could get a Kleenex sponsorship at least.
Would we get anything done? We would just be crying all the time.
It sounds like it's a beautiful compliment to each other. And I'm sure there's frustrations in that,
of
right?
Course.
Like when you're going through it, to be like, why aren't you responding like me? But being mindful that we do show up and grieve and express and celebrate and whatever it may be, positive emotions as well in different ways.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm interested to talk a little bit about identity. I was going to say labels, but like, I know, for example, I've often heard you speaking about being child-free after infertility. In the intake form for the podcast, I know you're referred to childless. You also,
I didn't see my option. That's why, because I don't want to say child free.
No, I get it. This is fine. This is not like I'm throwing Carrie under the bus in public or on the podcast. No, but it's a lot of people I speak with, regardless, like feel like these words are sort of inadequate, and like how kind of cruel to have the word child. And like, anyways, you also have birthed your daughter, and you know. I'm curious for you if there's any sense of mom, and that like, I just I'm interested how you sort of move through and how important, or if not at all, or adequate or inadequate these identities are. Yeah.
So I feel like recently I've been really trying to embrace the idea that like our identity is going to be kind of fluid and change. Yeah. I was so focused on becoming a mother, and then I became a bereaved mother. And I don't identify with the word mother. Like when people say like, oh, you're a mom, I'm like, I don't feel like a mom in the way that I wanted to. So that's not the right word for me. Yeah. I often get put into that box, and I'm not going to like fight anybody about it. But if somebody wants to dig deeper, I'm definitely like, it like having a disclaimer, like a bereaved mom doesn't feel good to me. Yeah. And I still have a relationship with Clementine. It's not a mother-daughter relationship though. It's something else. And I love exploring that, but that doesn't necessarily feel like a mom. And then with the idea of like thinking child-free after infertility, I used to say childless. It just didn't feel right to me. Yeah. And so I kind of started to explore. I didn't want to say child-free. So I just found the child-free after infertility, and that's how I identify now, but I acknowledge that that might change. And I think like holding on to the labels is tricky because it's probably not going to stay the same forever. And when that shift does come, it's going to be a little bit harder to change it because we don't want to let go of what our identity. Like I think about that even when I quit teaching. I didn't quit teaching for many years because I was like, but I'm a teacher, and I felt like noble in it. And then it was like, well, is that the reason I'm a teacher, is so I can call myself a teacher? No. So learning to kind of like explore how we identify is kind of exciting because who knows what it's going to be in a few years, but I have gotten a lot of negative feedback for it. But again, I think that says more about other people than it does about me. Like even at my doctor's office the other day, she was like, well, you are a mother. And like the way she said it to me, I was like, and I said this, I acknowledge that on paper, I am a mom, but I don't feel like a mom. So I don't call myself a mom. And it kind of made her uncomfortable, but I was like, good. Yeah, exactly. Like
comfortable. What to say?
And I think people say it because they want to make me feel good.
Yeah. Like empower you to be like, you're still a mom. Don't worry.
Yeah. But, it's like, okay, do you want to be a mom like I am? No, nobody does. So it just, it's not, I've heard of I think it's the word viloma. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly.
I don't know it.
It's one of the only times I've ever heard it's like, a mother who doesn't have any children alive or something like that. But that word, like I've never really heard it outside of, you know, the one thing I've read. And so
it's start telling people that that's what you are just to puzzle them.
Right.
Oh no, I'm viloma.
So I think
you know what that is?
I think it's really interesting to explore what that is. Cause I don't know, who knows what will be.
Yeah, absolutely. You probably saw the Instagram reel going around a few months ago saying we should call child-free people free-range adults. And I'm like, don't hate it.
Right?
Don't hate it. Okay. Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I agree. I think both a lot of these terms are to an extent inadequate and it can evolve. And I think, frankly, if I say we can call ourselves whatever we want, I'm sure people are going to disagree with that too. But the point is, yeah. I mean, if you say you're something you're not, you arguably are lying. Like, I'm a doctor. I'm not really a doctor, but I'm just going to tell people I am. But okay. There was something you said that was there's a few things you've said, like some great one-liners, and I'm going to make sure that we visit them all. But before we wrap up here, so something you said that I just thought like, wow, this is so poignant. And it's Tyra Banks who's on the Today Show. Okay, I thought that was her. I haven't seen her for a little while. I was like, oh, okay, random. She seemed quite touched by this in particular. And that was, you said, I basically something to the extent of you were anticipating and wanting the miracle of a child and you realized that the miracle is you. Can you tell us about that?
I was so focused on getting, especially after having our first miscarriage, I was like, well, I'm going to get the rainbow baby. That's going to be that miracle story. And that's the like success infertility story that I would see a lot. And years and years went by and I was like, oh, what if I don't get that in the way that I wanted? And then I thought, I'm still a success story though, because my life is wonderful. And if the miracle isn't the baby, what is the miracle? And then it was like, I think it can be me. And I put it back to myself and like, what can I do that feels miraculous? And even if it's just sitting and having my coffee in the morning, that can be enough. And just like using a reframe with that has been very helpful of like, I still get a miracle. Because like a lot of people will be like, well, you still don't have a baby. And I'm like, that's right.
Who says that? Carrie, I'm going to fight all these people.
I feel like
I'm your new social media manager. I'll be in the DMs first. Okay. We're screening messages.
I love that.
Oh my God.
Because dealing with comments online has been a muscle for sure. But it's like, again, that's something's going on with that person that has nothing to do with me because I'm triggering something inside of them. And I can like, if I get to be the miracle, then like kind of every little thing becomes miraculous, which is my favorite.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that was one of the other things you said, that like you are a success story.
Yes.
Now, the other thing you say, and I cite this, of course, with credit to my clients because I love it so much, is that I have a sad story, not a sad life.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
So I never wanted the pity. Like, it's like, I get it. This sucks, but this is also my life, but I don't want my life to suck. And so being the writer that I am, I just kind of was like playing with those words. And because like, even when I see people now and they're like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, yeah, it is sad, but I always want to be like, but I'm not sad. So it's a sad story, not a sad life is like the narrative that I'm telling myself right now, to acknowledge the pain that what happened was really tragic, but also that doesn't mean that I'm going to live a sad life because of that. And even if people choose to do that, because I know that some do, that's your choice. To an extent. And I am actively working on having a very sparkly, happy life because of what happened. And I don't necessarily know if I'd have that same approach if Clementine didn't die. I'm sure I would be looking at it in a different way, but that's not my story. I'm just relying on like the facts that happened and moving forward from there.
Yeah. Carrie, where can we find you? What do we need to know? You're writing or have written a memoir. I saw you're querying for agents.
I'm querying.
However you say it, querying.
I'm currently writing a memoir. I'm still looking for representation. And
everyone listening, if you know someone, if you're an agent who would like to represent.
Yes. I'm in grad school, getting my MFA in writing for my memoir. So my writing has like improved so much in the past few months. I love it. And I'm on Instagram and TikTok a lot at Blooming with Care. And I love connecting because I didn't really find my, I didn't see myself in my real life community. So I turned to the online community, and that has changed my whole entire life. So I'm there.
Amazing. Okay. Well, I thank you so much for coming on. I've loved speaking with you so much. I'm just inspired by the person you are. And I have no doubt that if I lived down the street, we'd be like, can we sit in the tub and drink champagne together?
Yes.
Okay.
I've done it before with other friends. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I love it. Okay. Well, dreams can happen. Thank you again for coming on today. And for everyone listening, we wish you a beautiful rest of your day, a sparkly day.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of the Kids or Childfree podcast. Now, before you leave, I want to ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel because lo and behold, we have a YouTube channel. I've failed to tell most of you that this even exists. Now, you can not only find all episodes of the podcast on our YouTube channel, but you can also find short form videos. We've got them categorized based on the types of conversations I'm having, whether they're with parents, whether they're about being child free. We've got different tips on how you can navigate this kids or child free decision. So lots of good stuff there. Go check it out. Our YouTube channel is Kids or Child Free. I will have it linked in the show notes of today's episode, so you've got that handy. Otherwise, you can give it a search. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes or videos that we share on there. All right, that is all from me. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.